All right, you guys, we are super excited because we have Shayna Powless with us. So thank you so much, Shayna, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So our listeners have heard your bio, lots of accolades, lots of exposure to all the types of two-wheel sporting that we will get into today. But as our listeners know the routine, we're going to go first to your two truths and a lie. So I'm going to let you break those down for me, Shayna.
It's a great question, or this is a great game because I literally just played this yesterday with some friends and family for
Oh,
Christmas. So
fun.
I already have all three in my head that I've been thinking
Perfect.
on. So the first one would be, so I used to ride horses competitively.
Okay.
Next one would be I've broken 4 bones from cycling.
Ooh,
Another one is I hold the 1 mile track and field record from high school.
running. I
Running,
guess,
yes,
yeah.
running.
Okay, cool. Okay, so let's see. I feel like you could definitely do the 1 mile track and field record from high school. And I think did you grow up in Sacramento?
Yeah, in Roseville.
Okay.
hmm
That's where my brother lives. And that's like 2 hours from me. Do you still live there now or where are you now?
I live in Jacksonville now in Florida,
Oh,
but
nice.
I split time between there and Buffalo, New York. But actually,
Okay.
we're heading back to Florida tomorrow, so
All right.
we'll be there. That's like our main home base for
Yeah.
like half the year, I would say.
Nice, beautiful weather.
Yeah, back to the
Yeah.
warmth from New York.
Yes. Yeah, lucky. Okay, I'm gonna go with I feel like you could get good exposure to horses and the like surrounding outside of Sacramento area. So I'm gonna say you didn't break 4 bones. I think maybe it was like less, hopefully. Or maybe not from cycling. That's gonna be my guess as the lie, but we will reveal it for the listeners at the end of the episode.
hmm
So, okay, Shayna, why don't you take us back just a little bit, and tell us kind of what got you excited about endurance sports and well, I should say not all of it is endurance, right? That you've crossed through the years, but what got you excited about riding a bike?
Well, I would say around the same time I started being able to walk. So very young, as a young toddler, I was riding bikes. So I got started in it very young. Um, and it was pretty much the same for my brother and I. I
Hmm.
have a younger brother. So it's two of us. And then my parents also being really into cycling and big athletes, like with triathlon and running and cycling and all those things. Like they really just kind of wanted to share that passion with us. So ever since the beginning, it's really just kind of been a family thing for us.
That's
Um,
great.
yeah, just a family full of athletes. It just
Yeah.
like sports just kind of runs in our DNA. So yeah, I would say definitely have to attribute how I got started with everything to my parents. And it wasn't just like cycling and triathlon and endurance sports. It was kind of everything. Like they got us
Hmm.
involved in everything from gymnastics to
Oh,
like soccer, swim team,
nice.
um, baseball, basketball, volleyball, kind of just did
Wow.
everything. And
Yeah.
it was kind of like it was almost the exact same for my brother. He just kind of followed in my footsteps and he wanted to do everything I was doing. So
Hmm.
I was kind of that extra influence for him
Yeah,
with all the
that's great.
sports. Um, on top of my parents kind of encouraging us or encouraging him to try everything as well.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of where it all started. Specifically, like my dad was an Ironman triathlete for many years. He's done
Wow.
like 17 Ironmans.
Nice.
And then my mom was more so a marathon runner. That was
Mm.
her thing. And fun fact, she actually got to represent Guam in the 1992 Barcelona Olympics
Oh,
for the
wow.
marathon, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, just I always like to share that because yeah, from day one, like my parents have always been a big inspiration for
that's so
me
cool.
and my brother as well.
Yeah,
So
wow, that's
yeah.
great. So, playing all those different types of sports through school, did you? was cycling something where you just enjoyed it more, or did you find like, whoa, I'm like I have naturally like really good at this, or like what took you off on that path?
So I would say like the thing that really intrigued me the most was probably triathlon. So like triathlon
Mm,
was kind of where like my real love of cycling started to develop just
mm,
through doing triathlon and like enjoying the cycling part of triathlon more than like the running and the swimming, and is also kind of what I saw myself excelling the most in. So I would say from years like like late elementary school through middle school, I was doing like mainly triathlon and running. And then kind of when I got more into high school, like freshman year, started racing in the NorCal High School Mountain Bike League
nice, yeah.
and got really competitive in that. I was still doing other sports at the time. So in high school, I was doing track and field and then
Mm,
cross country and triathlon outside of school. Because of
wow.
course, triathlon's not, it's not a school sport. So
Right.
kind of had to do that on our own. But yeah, I was just trying to balance everything as best as I could, along with, school.
Yeah.
School was always priority. My parents made sure of that. Um, but yeah, I would say like middle of high school, after seeing like a lot of success my freshman, sophomore year with the NorCal League,
Hmm.
and like getting a couple of state titles, that's kind of where I really began to realize my true potential in the sport.
Mm,
And it is also what I enjoyed the most. So I just decided to give up track and field because it was conflicting with the mountain bike league season,
mm,
both in the spring, and so I just, yeah, after sophomore year, I said goodbye to track and then just focused on mountain biking from there on out, pretty much through
wow.
senior year. And
Yeah.
then graduated, went to college at UCLA, joined the cycling team at UCLA,
Hmm.
and yeah, fell in love with cycling even more. And
Hmm.
yeah, after I'd graduated, I'd kind of stepped away from all the other sports to just focus on cycling to see what I could
Yeah.
do with it.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, I would say yeah, in high school that was kind of like the pivoting moment for me and
Yeah.
the time where I really like was able to kind of get my name out there with USA
Hmm.
Cycling and different cycling teams and sponsors, and
Wow.
yeah, it definitely was a big stepping stone that period of
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Amazing. When you went to UCLA, were you doing road cycling primarily, or were you doing mountain or both? Or do they have a mountain bike
Um
team?
yeah, they have both. I was doing a little bit of mountain biking.
Mm,
Um, but I think that I did a bit more road because I think the road team was a bit bigger and
mm,
there were maybe a couple other people doing mountain biking, so I was kind of just more
yeah.
drawn to the road races because that's
Hmm.
what more people were doing, at
Yeah.
least at at the time.
Hmm.
But I did a few mountain bike races here and there. I also remember having a pretty heavy fall schedule with my
Mm,
classes, so
yeah.
um yeah, it was just a bit harder to do like the full mountain bike race schedule. But also I would say like outside of college, I was on a U23 development team racing
Mm,
a lot of
hmm.
mountain biking. So I felt like I was already doing it enough,
Yeah. Yeah.
outside of the collegiate stuff. So
Wow.
yeah, did mostly just road, I would say mainly those four
Yeah.
years at UCLA with them.
Nice.
Yeah.
And through the years, you've done road, you've done mountain, you've done gravel, you've done track.
Hmm.
Am I missing any?
You said gravel, right?
Yeah.
Gravel, esports. I've done a lot of Swift
Oh,
racing as well.
oh yes. Yeah. Yep. Was that through COVID
Um,
or
yeah.
yep. Yeah.
Yeah, actually I started it right before COVID, so the year before in 2019.
Hmm.
Just for fun, because my coach at the time was like, I think this could be a really good training tool for you, like whenever
Nice.
you have bad weather, which we tend to
Mm,
have a lot of rain in Florida, and
yeah.
especially during hurricane season. So it was kind
Right.
of nice to have that as like an extra training tool when I had to ride inside.
Yeah.
But yeah, during COVID, with the lack of in real life racing throughout the
Hmm.
year, it kind of, the team I was on at the time, Team 2020, we just did a bunch of Swift racing together
Mm,
as a team, and that kind of
yeah.
helped keep the motivation up for training throughout the
That's
year.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
I've
So of
done
all the,
cross as well.
oh yeah.
Cross is another one.
Yeah. So of all those different modalities, do you have a favorite or one that you enjoy the most?
Mountain biking is my first love,
Yeah.
so I probably have to say like off-road, like mountain biking, gravel.
Hmm.
I mean, personally, I enjoy the most.
Hmm.
Um, and then I would say probably road would have to be probably in second behind those two, and then
Yeah.
track probably.
Yeah.
Road and track are pretty close. Yeah.
How's the mountain biking in Florida? Is there a mountain biking scene there?
Yeah, if you know where to go, they're like
Mm.
re the really good mountain bike trails are kind of few and far between.
Hmm.
So if you go more like Central Florida where there's like actual hills
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
not pancake flat like the rest of Florida, then you can actually find
Yeah.
some good stuff. So like if you go closer to places like Ocala,
Mm.
which is like not too far from like Orlando.
Okay.
There's some really good trails out there.
Nice.
In terms of like direct vicinity where I'm at in Jacksonville, not so much. There's a couple
Hmm.
spots, but it's all very flat, like punchy, twisty, very
Mm.
rooty type of
Yeah.
trails. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Awesome. Are there crocodiles out there or is it alligators? I always mix it up.
It's gators.
Gator, just
Lots of
gators.
gators. Yeah, no, Crocs are more like I think South America, but we do have a lot of
Okay.
gators. Yeah.
I did not study animal biology. Well, actually, I had to do some little, yeah, I do actually. I had to do some biology, but not like that in my undergrad. So, okay,
Hmm.
with all those different sports or different types of cycling, I should say, how has your nutrition, whether it's during or even if it's just like pre and post those different modalities, evolved over the years? Like, did you used to fuel at all when you were doing high school cycling? Did that become more of a thing in college at all, or how does
Hmm.
that evolve with time?
Yeah, I think when I was younger, I didn't really I didn't really have a full understanding of how to best fuel myself for certain
Mm.
things. Um, but I will say like I did get like some good advice here and there from my parents with them being athletes
Yeah.
themselves and having so much experience with
Hmm.
fueling, like pre post race, during races, during training or pre post training. So
That's
they've
great.
definitely kind of helped me out here and there and I feel like I was pretty lucky, like in my early
Yeah.
years as an athlete, because I was able to have their guidance like each step of the way, and um, they're not like nutrition certified by any means, but they were just going off of like their personal
Yeah.
experiences, and um, yeah, for me over the years, just having their guidance, and then what I learned just through my own personal journey,
Hmm.
each step of the way, with races and training, I've just kind of developed like a pretty good routine and like I
Hmm.
guess like pretty general understanding
Hmm.
of things and what I know works for me and even like because I coach athletes as well, other cyclists of
Yeah.
whatever age, any level,
Hmm.
and I feel like
Shout out your coaching company name.
yeah, it's a Powless Performance.
Check it out, you guys. We'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah, so I've been coaching for the last few years now. So yeah, I began with it just before COVID, and
Mm.
um, I feel like with so much of the personal experience I have with like training, racing, and like just general nutrition, I've been able
Yeah.
to kind of give like just basic advice and tips to
Yeah.
people I work with when it comes to training and racing. But yeah, I mean, just because I've been doing it for so many years, you know, racing, training, doing all different kinds of sports, like disciplines of cycling.
Hmm.
I feel like I've just progressively been able to learn more about my own body, like how my
Yes.
body works as a woman, as a female athlete, which is so different from male athletes.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I've definitely learned a lot.
Yeah.
It's evolved. My understanding has evolved a lot over the
Yes.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You start to trial and error, I'm sure, a lot of stuff and notice trends with
Hmm.
time or cycles and stuff like that. Did you, with your parents having had the endurance background, was it like sports nutrition products at the time that they like had suggestions for? Or were they making you like homemade like fueling bites, or what was that like?
Mm, well, I know my parents would make us rice cakes sometimes, so
Hmm.
that's always kind of like been a big thing for me. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's good. I mean, you need carbs as an endurance athlete, so it's
Yeah.
like a really good source of carbs, and you can like customize it to however you want it. Like,
Hmm.
I really like adding like, well, I like any kind of rice cake to be honest, but I really like adding berries, like
Yeah.
blueberries or raspberries. That's like a little bit sweet, and then
Hmm.
like for savory stuff, like I don't know, I've had rice cakes with like eggs and bacon, like
Yep.
things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I like every kind of rice cake possible to make. But
Hmm.
yeah, no, so when we were pretty young, my brother and I ate a lot of Power Bars because my dad,
Yeah.
as a triathlete, was sponsored by Power Bar.
Oh,
So
nice.
we
Yeah.
always had boxes and boxes of Power Bar product like
Yeah.
in our house at all times. So I remember my earliest memories of fueling myself was with Power Bars.
Yeah.
And yeah, I always loved them. I think my favorite flavor was like the vanilla Power Bar.
Mm.
I haven't had a Power Bar in years, but
Yeah.
I remember that was just like something we ate and like we never got tired of. We loved them so
Yeah.
much.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
awesome. That's good.
yeah.
Yeah, you don't see power bars as much anymore. I forget if the company changed or what, but and then kind of talking about now, what is the primary cycling sport you're in now for our listeners?
Yeah, so this year it's been road.
Okay.
I did a couple gravel races, like SBT gravel
Oh yeah.
and gravel worlds, UCI
Mm-hmm.
gravel worlds.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, other than that, it was just all road focused.
Nice.
But I would say up until this year, like 2023, 2022, a bit of 2021, I was focused a lot on gravel, or not gravel, track. It was mainly
Mm-hmm.
focused on track. Yeah. But
So I think our listeners probably haven't heard as much about track. Can you explain like what what is track cycling and what is the maybe duration that you're out there? How does it operate?
track is, it is very different from every other discipline. Of course, you know, you're on a velodrome, could be indoor or outdoor. The velodrome I've ridden on the most because, you know, doing things with the USA national team, we would always be at the OTC for training camps.
Hmm.
Um, that was a like a big indoor velodrome, like inside a big bubble, basically. 333-meter track, all concrete. So it was a little bumpy here and
Oh
there.
my gosh.
Um, not as smooth as like the typical wooden tracks that
Hmm.
you'd have races on, or I guess like UCI races on. But yeah, it's very intense, I would
Hmm.
say, compared to a lot of other disciplines. There's a lot more um like all out intensity in terms of like training. Um, you know, races tend to be a lot shorter. What I did specifically was pursuit focus. So I did individual pursuit and team pursuit.
Hmm.
Um, individual pursuit, it's like a time trial, but
Hmm.
you're just it's just yourself on the track basically. Or
Hmm.
you might also have somebody else on the opposite side of the track also
Hmm.
racing at the same time,
Hmm.
but you're basically just riding by yourself unless you're catching the other person.
Yeah.
But most of the time you're by yourself and you're just trying to do a 3K, 3 kilometers as fast as you can. And then team pursuit is 4 kilometers, but you're with three other people on the track. So it's a
Mm.
team of four. And yeah, that's basically a team time trial.
Wow.
And you all ride in a line. Um, somebody's at the front always. And yeah, it's always for X amount of time or X amount of laps that they're at the front, and then they swing off, swing to the back, and you basically just do pulls like that. But the goal is to complete the 4 kilometers as fast as you can.
Wow.
Um, so that's what I was doing when I was doing track, was just all pursuit focused.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it's really fun because I had like there's team time trials on the road as well, but
Hmm.
I'd never actually done like a true team time trial on the road. Um, but on the track it's even just a lot different from the road.
Hmm.
Um, because the fact you're on a velodrome, the races are so
Yeah.
much shorter. Road races, you tend to see them being a lot longer. You know, you'll have races
Hmm.
that are as short as like a few miles to like as long as 80, 90 plus miles. So on the
Wow.
track, everything is shorter. Um, you'll have events that are 49 seconds long, which are for like
Wow.
sprinters, and then you'll have races that are up to an close to an hour, I want to say, which is the Madison that you would do with a partner. So there's a bunch of different events, which is really
Yeah.
cool. Sprinting events, endurance events. Um, but yeah, I've always been an endurance athlete, so I was more focused on the endurance events. I did an Omnium one time,
Wow.
um, which is basically it's 4 or 5 different races within a
Hmm.
day, and it's all scored based on points.
Oh, wow.
Um, Based on how you do in each of those races throughout the
Yeah.
day. So yeah, I've only done one of those, but yeah, it was just mainly pursuit racing for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Goodness. So you must learn a lot about aerodynamics in something like that, right? You get all that
Yes.
testing done and wind tunnel stuff and yeah.
Yeah, I've never done wind tunnel testing. I've
Mm.
only done testing on the track.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, just like measuring our CDA,
Hmm.
doing, progressive efforts like in different positions on the bike to kind of test
Yeah.
like what will help your CDA the most.
Hmm.
Um, CDA basically being like the measurement of your aerodynamics, your body on the bike. Um, but yeah, it's very aerodynamic focused. You wear like the aero helmets. You're in aero bars, at least as
Yeah.
a endurance or pursuit rider.
Hmm.
For the other events, you're just in mass start bars, which are
Okay.
just like the drop bars similar to what you'd
Hmm.
see on a road bike. But yeah, for the pursuit events, it's you're always in the aero bars
Wow.
just to be as aero as possible.
Yeah. And so in something like that, like the pursuit like you're talking about, are you bringing any bottles on your bike or is it so short you're fueling prior and going in?
No bottles, no
Yeah.
drinking, no nutrition. Like you're not technically not even allowed to carry like a
Mm.
gel on you.
Mm.
Even for like I think even for like the longer events like the Madison, which
Wow.
is like upwards of an hour,
Yeah.
I don't think you're allowed to have anything on the track just because
Hmm.
like if like it could be like a safety hazard if you drop
Totally.
something, then it's just like in the
Yeah.
way of like all the other riders, and
Yep.
tracks aren't very big, so there's
Yeah.
only so much room on the track, especially when you have like a full race of 10 plus people.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. So what does nutrition look like in like the hours leading up to a track race situation for you?
Well, typically I would like always take a gel like maybe 20 minutes before,
Hmm.
sometimes even 25 to 30 minutes before.
Hmm.
um yeah, especially like with how like actually, yeah, I would say maybe because the races were so short, you like I tried to like give myself enough time to like have whatever I'm consuming like gels fully absorbed before the racing actually starts.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're only on the track for 4 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's over before you
Yes.
know it. So
Yeah.
you want that energy to hit like
Hmm.
right as you're going, right?
Hmm.
Because it is so fast paced, like from the start off the line.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would just try and have a gel like maybe like right before I start doing my warm up, or like
Hmm.
during my warm up, maybe midway or something. Um, which I would do for like 25 to 30 minutes, and then I would
Yeah.
have like, about 20 minutes or so before ending, or yeah, from ending my warm down and then getting on the track to race.
Nice.
Which would usually give me enough time. But yeah, you have to time it very well. You have
Yeah.
to time it very well because I've timed it wrong many times, and
Mm.
it's like I feel like that surge of energy like
Hmm.
right as I'm finishing the ride, or like even
Mm.
right after I'm done racing.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Peak in
just a
blood sugars.
bunch of trial and error. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of like meals and stuff before the actual races, like just try and keep it pretty simple.
Hmm.
Nothing too heavy.
Hmm.
More like carb focus, carb and a little
Hmm.
bit of protein. Um, Nothing too fibrous either.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I
Yeah.
typically do it.
Nice. That makes sense. So how would that be different for something like the longer road cycling stuff, like you're saying, like 90 miles or more?
Hmm. So yeah, definitely a bit more, I would say, like in terms of volume of what I'm
Mm-hmm.
eating. Um, More carb heavy,
Mm-hmm.
just trying to eat just a good amount of carbs.
Do you have a go-to like
Yeah.
rice or oatmeal or?
Yeah, I love oatmeal. I love
Mhm.
oatmeal. If like, because sometimes if I have like too much oatmeal, like it can sit a little heavy. So sometimes I'll just opt for like cream of wheat,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um, which I know doesn't have quite as much carbs as oatmeal, but
Mm.
for me, it can help if it's like the race is a little on the shorter side, but I still
Yeah.
need something like in the stomach and um, that has enough for what I need to get
Yeah.
through. Yeah, yeah.
Nice. Do you travel with this stuff or do you find it with you? Because I know that's something a lot of athletes run into is like they race in all places all over the world sometimes, and sometimes they can't find what their kind of want to go to race morning breakfast would be.
Hmm. Yeah, I've definitely traveled with like my own oatmeal packets.
Yeah.
Like I'll do like overnight oats a lot,
Mm,
especially if it's like a like an earlier race like in the
hmm.
morning.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll do it the night before and then wake up and it's just ready for me to have. Like I'll eat it on the way sometimes, because we normally like to get to the race start like with enough time to do warm-ups if we need to. It could be up to like 2 hours before the race.
Mm,
Um,
hmm. Yeah.
so I try to make sure I'm done eating maybe around 2 hours before I'm actually set to start.
Hmm.
Um, which I think has it's worked out pretty well because I've done so many times where like I've just waited too long to eat or like ate
Mm,
too early and that goes kind of hand in hand with just the experience over the
yeah.
years, kind of figuring out the timing with eating.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I find that for me about 2 hours is good to be like meal is done.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that that works for a lot of people, a lot of other athletes.
Yeah. Do you mix anything with your oats or is it just like straight oatmeal?
Yeah, I like to mix like cinnamon.
Mm,
I love blueberries or any kind of berry really, but um, I usually opt for blueberries.
hmm.
Yogurt, just plain Greek yogurt, just for the
Hmm.
protein. Yeah, I just keep it pretty simple. Chia seeds, maybe a little bit of flax seeds,
Yeah.
um, some maple syrup, just to add a little sweetness,
Hmm.
or honey,
Yeah.
or a little bit of both. But yeah, I
Nice.
keep it pretty simple.
Yeah, that's great. Do you notice, I know you brought up menstrual cycle phase kind of when we were first talking, but do you notice a need to alter what that race morning breakfast is depending on cycle phase?
Yeah, so yeah, depending on where I'm at, like if I'm like, the week before or yeah, in the few days like leading up to my period, like I'll feel like things just sit differently, like
Hmm.
in my stomach or in my gut.
Yeah.
It's almost like it sits heavier
Mm-hmm.
and I'm more bloated.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and I did read a really good book that talked a lot about how to help manage that,
Mm.
how to like ease the symptoms like going into that phase of your cycle.
Yeah.
It's called Roar, and I think I see
Oh,
it on
yeah.
your shelf behind you by
Yeah,
Stacy Sims.
Stacy's the one who got me into sports nutrition. Yeah, she took me in when she was still at Osmo and she trained me in sex differences in sport. So yes, very familiar with
Mm-hmm.
Roar. We will link that for the listeners as well.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So ebbed and flowed, kind of the nutrition
Yeah.
based off of. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. And like I remember in the book there's like suggestions of like supplements you could take
Hmm. Yep.
to kind of help ease those PMS
Yeah.
symptoms and I've
Yeah.
I've I've found that it has helped me like if I am feeling particularly like bad in those days leading up to the period. So it's definitely helped. I would say like I'm pretty lucky in that I don't really have any symptoms that are too severe.
Hmm.
but yeah, there are times when I like the symptoms are there and
Yeah.
it's just, an extra inconvenience with training and or if
Yeah.
it's especially like during a race or leading up to a race and then I do have to kind
Hmm.
of alter things just based on how I'm feeling.
Right.
But yeah, if I am like feeling some symptoms, I'm just not feeling great, feeling like really bloated or really heavy, like I just try to opt for things that are a bit more on the lighter side.
Hmm.
Yeah, I just try to be a little bit more mindful of what I'm taking, and I will take those supplements. But I do kind of try to take or stay away from taking supplements. I'm
Hmm.
not super big on them. Um, so if that's kind of only if like I'm feeling like
Yeah.
very, yeah, very bad. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely really insightful being able to read through that. Um,
Yes,
and I would recommend any female athlete to give that one a read,
for
honestly.
sure. Yeah. It
Yeah.
is one of those ones where you're going through and you're like, oh, that's why that happens. Like all these like aha
Yeah.
moments. I felt like when I was reading that. Yeah, it's a great one. And we will
Hmm.
link that for the listeners. Roar by Dr. Stacy Sims is a fantastic book. And I think if you're perimenopausal, she just had another book that came out focused on perimenopausal athletes as well. So you can link that for the listeners. Um,
Hmm.
so kind of moving into the during race situation for the longer stuff, what do you have a target from like a fueling lens per hour, or do you go based off of how you feel, or how are you planning your during race nutrition?
Yeah, so I keep it pretty simple and it's just like something I've been like sticking to the last few years. I try and make sure like if it's like for a longer race, which is typical for most road races or like especially gravel races, which
Hmm.
tend to be even longer than road races, I try and stick to getting at least 80 to 90 grams of carbs per hour. And
Nice.
for me, that works.
Yeah.
Based on it, of course, is based on your body weight.
Hmm.
Um, and it's different for men versus women. And, it also depends on like how long your event is and stuff. But yeah, for any endurance ride or race, honestly, that's like over a couple hours,
Hmm.
I would say I'm shooting for 80 to 90 grams of carbs per hour.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and that can be in the form of like gels or blocks or
Hmm.
bars. Um, Also in your bottles, like with
Hmm.
whatever you're putting in there, whatever mix.
Hmm.
Um, my team, I've been on the last couple of years, has been sponsored by First Endurance.
Oh yeah.
It's
Hmm.
the team actually, DNA Pro Cycling, they're based in Salt Lake City, and it's just this company is also based in that area. So they've been like a team sponsor for years, and I've been using their products like religiously the last couple of years, and
Nice.
I really enjoy all their products.
Yeah,
No matter what kind of training day I have or
that's
what kind
great.
of race it is, they have something for everything.
Yeah, that's
Um,
awesome.
I try not to overdo it on the gels, and that's something that I feel like I'm still kind of learning
Hmm.
is how to not overdo it because in races like they can just be so hectic and crazy sometimes that gels are so easy to just pull out of your back pocket and just smash
Hmm.
like consistently. So for me personally, that's the easiest way to get in those carbs and calories and what I need. But I do try and mix it up with other things like the blocks, the bars,
Yeah.
just so that I'm not getting like the ever dreaded sugar gut that you might
Yeah.
have towards the end of a race or a longer
Yes.
ride, which has happened very many times for me.
Oh man. Yeah. Yeah. Do you try like whether it's road versus gravel, like terrain wise, do you try and plan for more like liquid nutrition in your bottles in gravel versus more like maybe more gels and less liquid? Or do you have or is it the same, I guess, for both sports for you?
Yeah, for gravel, I tend to go with a more carb heavy mix in my
Mm-hmm.
bottles. Um, because like I mentioned, like gravel races tend to be a bit
Yeah.
longer than the road races on average. Um, so yeah, like for example, when I did SBT gravel this year in August, Steamboat Springs gravel, that was 125 miles. So very long. I think it was between somewhere between 8 and 9 hours. It was just
Wow.
a really long day. So I
Yeah.
made sure to have all my bottles with it's called the First Endurance Pro Mix,
Oh yeah.
and also had it in my Camelback that I had.
Nice. Yeah.
So yeah, that's just they have like a regular drink mix, and then they also have this high carb drink mix, which they call the Pro. And
Nice.
I especially like the Pro because it doesn't, like, even though it is so high in carbs, I think it has like it's like 60 grams of carbs per serving,
Mm.
which is pretty,
Yeah.
that's a good amount of carbs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Do
would
you
have like one bottle an hour with that in it, and then like
nice.
smash a gel along with it, and I would be good for that hour.
Yeah, that's great. Do you talking about the stomach, like the gut situation, have you ever run into any other like challenges during racing, whether it's like lose a bottle or you feel like you're bonking or cramping or anything like that that you've kind of like learned from over the years of how to adjust or tweak your nutrition and hydration game plan?
For sure. Yeah, I've kind of, because of how long I've been racing for, like I've kind of experienced everything there is to experience when it comes to, mistakes made with nutrition
Yeah.
during training and races. So, yeah, I wouldn't say that I have a lot of experience with cramping.
Mm,
Um, for me, like, thankfully, honestly, like, cramping's terrible, but it has happened to me over the years, but not super often. Like, it has to
yeah.
be something pretty drastic has to be going on for that to happen. And I think the reason why I've been good about avoiding that has just been I'm pretty good with like keeping track of how much I drink.
Yeah.
Not just during events, but like leading up to like the training or leading up to races, and then
Smart.
especially like with all the stage race experience I have over the years, like
Hmm.
it kind of forces you to stay on top of
Yeah.
hydration, both on and off the bike, and
Yeah.
your nutrition as well. Um, just being extra mindful of how much you're intaking. It's just so
Yeah.
crucial for events
Yeah.
like that. Um, but I would say a thing that I have struggled with quite a bit, and I still do to this day, not a ton, but like every now and then I'll get just like that weird like sugar gut feeling, like
Mm,
in your stomach or like in your
yeah.
gut, and it's just, and I think that's a lot of times I can get carried away with how many gels I'm taking, so sometimes I overdo it
Yeah.
because I am just trying to smash them and make sure that I'm not falling behind or
Right.
yeah, going into a deficit too soon in a race.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's just out of, yeah, paranoia of not wanting to bonk more than
Right.
anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have to remind myself that I have to mix up what I'm taking and not just do too much too soon with
Mm,
just the gels. And
right.
yeah, that's something that I've been trying to work on lately.
Yeah. Do you notice that more like lower stomach or is it like upper like burpee nausea or is it more like lower stomach cramping, that kind of sensation?
More like I would say like lower,
Yeah.
like in the gut, like that
Yeah.
sugar gut.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just not
Yeah.
pleasant.
Yeah. That's hard. Yeah. Once you get there, that's a hard one to to navigate from when you're in the moment with it, unfortunately. Okay,
Hmm.
so jumping to post race, what is your go-to nutrition like right after you finish a race? Are you just like, oh, I'm sick of gels and all the things and not hungry?
Hmm.
Or do you take in some nutrition pretty quickly?
Um, Usually I'll have like a can of Coke, like a
Hmm.
mini can, like right after I finish.
Yeah.
And that's something that our Team Swan years typically
Hmm.
have on hand, like right there for us after we
Nice.
cross the finish line. And honestly, I find myself craving just Coke, like right
Mm,
after a race or even
yeah.
after like a hard training ride, especially if it's
Mhm.
like really hot outside.
Yeah.
That's just something that I've kind of always done, always
Mhm.
crave. I don't know, for whatever reason, maybe it's just because of the sweetness, like the sugar amount.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, there's nothing like a a Coke after a really hard race, especially if it's hot.
Yeah.
I drink some Sprite too. Like we always have either Coke or Sprite.
Hmm.
I typically go for the Coke, and then after like I kind of settle down a little bit, cool off, I'll do like a protein drink
Hmm.
with at least like 25 grams of protein,
Nice.
just like in a small bottle.
Yeah.
Um, that's also something that our Team Soigneurs always have on hand for us after the races.
That's nice.
And especially crucial like if it's like during a stage race and like you have to race again the next day.
Yeah.
So you want to be able to really stay on top of the recovery and like making sure you're having that protein intake like pretty soon after
Hmm.
you finish the day of racing so that you can prep for the next day. Um, and I'll also even have like a good amount of protein, like if it is like during a stage race, like before I go to bed,
Nice. Yeah.
just to kind of like help aid that recovering process overnight as I
Yeah.
sleep. And that can be in the form of like Greek yogurt or like another protein drink. But I typically
Mhm.
like to have yogurt with like a little bit of honey and maybe some berries.
Nice.
It's almost like a little like dessert before bed.
Totally. Yes. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. We have a few athletes that will do like cottage cheese and granola. I don't know if that sounds as appealing. You could do yogurt and granola too, same idea.
I
But
do
yeah,
that too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Granola and yogurt.
yes, that's so good. Do you I know we've had a few stage racing athletes on the podcast, and a few of them talked about the Swan pushing the tart cherry juice like right after a stage. Do they do that with you guys? Is that still a thing?
We do like we usually always have cherry juice like
Mm-hmm.
wherever our team is staying. Like
Yeah.
I would say we don't I think it's less common to see it being like or having it after the race, and it's
Hmm.
more like later in the evening, like before
Hmm.
bed, just to help
Yeah.
for like sleeping
Yep.
and recovery purposes. But
Yeah.
yeah, I do love tart cherry juice before
Yeah.
bed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good one. That's if you have the concentrate too, some people will mix that with Greek yogurt before bed. Then you get it's a
Hmm.
good combo too.
I haven't
Um
done that, but I'll have to try
yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's a yummy one. Okay, so I want to be mindful of your time here, so I'm going to jump past some of our questions here and I'm going to jump to our questions from our listeners and we'll zip through some of these. But what are your goals for 2025?
So I'm stepping away from racing next year.
Taking
Um,
a year off or what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I just because I've been a racer for so long, like ever
Yeah.
since like young childhood years. So I just want to like experience life and do some other things
Awesome.
starting next year. And whether or not I return to the sport, that's kind of TBD. But
Hmm.
I know for sure, the love is always going to be there for the
Yeah.
sport, and I'll always be tethered to it in one way or
Hmm.
another. And
Yeah.
I have so many connections um, with others in the cycling world. So yeah, the connection's never going to go away, and
Right.
neither is the passion. But yeah, I'm just kind of ready for like a new chapter.
Hmm.
It's just been a crazy whirlwind um, career, I would say, since the beginning, and especially in these last few years, I've been like away from home more than I've actually been home, which has been
Yeah.
hard in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just want to experience like a bit more normalcy with like my
Hmm.
schedule
Yeah.
next year. And yeah, so on and so forth, even after that, we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just kind of want to dive a little bit more into developing my coaching business and
Cool.
um, diving a bit more into our nonprofit work, the
Yes.
Dreamcatcher Foundation with my fiance.
Let's
Um,
talk about that because that was one of the questions too. Want people want info on the Dreamcatcher Foundation.
Yeah, so it's a nonprofit my fiance and I started back in 2018, I want to say.
Wow.
And my fiance, he's a football player. He's
Mm.
been playing football ever since he was 13, 14 years old.
Wow.
Um, he's been playing as a pro the last he's in his eighth year now in the league,
Wow.
actually. So yeah, it's just been a kind of a crazy last several
Yeah.
years with both of our lifestyles as athletes. But yeah,
Hmm.
so I'm actually part of the Oneida Nation Turtle Clan. He's a part of the Ojibwe and Doki's First Nation. up in
Hmm.
Canada. So he's actually French Canadian.
Mm.
But with both of us being Native athletes, we just feel a strong inclination to give back to Native communities,
Yeah.
particularly Native youth through sport,
Amazing.
such as sports camps, equipment donations. We've
Awesome.
been able to donate bikes in the past to kids of the Seneca Nation up here
That's
in the
great.
Buffalo area where we're at half the year.
Wow.
And then we've also been able to host a football camp up
Mm.
in Ely's hometown of Ottawa, Canada.
Cool.
And that was, yeah, that was super fun. I've hosted multiple cycling clinics on various reservations over the years. And yeah, it's just something I really enjoy doing. I love being able to give back to, the communities, and especially with like kids from those communities who a lot of times don't have
Hmm.
the best resources
Yeah.
for things like, getting into cycling
Yeah.
or sports in general for that matter.
Hmm.
So anything we can do to, provide or even just helping to inspire these kids to lead healthier lifestyles,
Yeah.
being more active. That's really kind of the main goal of what we do through our
Hmm.
nonprofit. And then I guess the other side of the nonprofit would be raising awareness of the missing and murdered Indigenous
Mm.
women and girls crisis in North
Hmm.
America, which
Wow.
is something not a lot of people have even heard of, but we
Hmm.
feel that everybody should know about. Um, and yeah, just to give like a statistic on that, Native women are murdered at a rate 10 times higher than the national average,
Jeez.
which is it's completely crazy. It's just
Yeah.
absurd. And the fact that most people have never even heard of
Yeah.
this statistic is wild. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of that is because of the underrepresentation in the media
Mm. Hmm.
and the fact that Native communities, Native reservations they have complete sovereignty. So
Mm.
um, they're under tribal jurisdiction and not like
Mm.
federal
I see.
jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So, things that go on these reservations um, could just fly completely under the radar
Wow.
um, for everybody off the reservation. Yeah,
Mm.
it's just kind of how it is. But yeah, it's something that's very near and dear to our heart, just trying to
Hmm.
raise awareness of this.
Hmm.
And yeah, I guess another reason for it could be there's a correlation with trafficking, like human trafficking. That's another big thing that
Wow.
is another factor
Yeah.
with this crisis. So yeah,
Wow.
we did a documentary last fall. It's called Gone. If people
Oh,
are interested in learning more
yeah.
about this crisis and hear from a family whose relative actually was a victim of
Oh my gosh.
MMIW.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you go onto YouTube, it's just it's called Gone by NFL 360.
Okay.
And
We'll link
yeah,
that.
you'll hear mainly Ely talking about it
Mm.
and some of his family, like his mom, and then I'm
Hmm.
also talking a little bit about it in the
Wow.
documentary, but it's mainly centered on a family who was directly affected by
Wow.
MMIW. So yeah,
Okay.
you'd get to hear firsthand of the effects of it and
Yeah.
how crazy it all is.
Yeah. Goodness. Well, we will definitely link the Dreamcatcher Foundation and then the link to Gone in the show notes for our listeners so you guys can check that out, read more about it, donate. And then would also love to hear about your Powless Grand Fondo.
Yeah, so we hosted a fondo, our family, back in November.
Hmm.
First ever inaugural fondo. We've never
Nice.
hosted an event like this before, but it was in Auburn, California,
Oh,
just
yeah.
just up the road from where we grew up in Roseville, so
Hmm.
just north of Sacramento. And we just really wanted to do something this year that kind of brought the community together, kind of brought us back to our roots.
Yeah.
And yeah, just wanted to celebrate like the end of the season, celebrate our passion for the sport.
Hmm.
And we thought, what better way than to do this fondo
That's
for all
awesome.
that. So yeah, it was really great. Yeah, the weather could have been a little better. It
Mm.
was a bit rainy and cold,
Mhm.
but it's
Yeah.
November.
Yeah.
You never know what you're gonna get with weather in November, and especially in Northern California. But we
Yeah.
had a pretty good turnout. We had close to 200 people show
Oh,
up, so
nice. That's
even
great.
despite the weather. So
Yeah,
we
that's
can't really
amazing.
complain. Yeah, it
Awesome.
was great. Yeah.
Do you think you'll
But
do it in 2025?
we would love to. Yeah,
Yeah.
we need to have a meeting about how we're going to execute it again next year. But I think with
Awesome.
the turnout that we had this year, uh, it was a good sign for us that we think that we want to continue it on and make it like a yearly
Yay.
thing, and
Yeah.
hopefully it gets bigger and better each year. We definitely learned a lot. There's so much that goes into planning
Yeah.
an event like that, and thankfully we had our event coordinator handle most of the logistics of everything, so took a lot of
I,
weight off our shoulders. But
yeah.
yeah, no, there's so much that goes into it. So yeah, now is like the time when we're kind of thinking about regrouping and like talking about, things that we can improve on, which there were a
Mhm.
few things we could definitely do better. But I would
Yeah.
say for our first ever event, it was really, really successful.
That's amazing. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Okay, I'll do one more listener question and then we got to jump to your two truths and lies. So we have, do you ride bikes because you like carbs or do you like carbs because you ride bikes?
I'd say both.
Okay. Awesome. Good
Both.
answer.
I'm a big carb lover, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
you
I
gotta
love any
be.
kind of bread. It's like, yeah, I biking is great because you burn so much, right?
Yeah,
So, and you need to eat a lot. Like you need to eat
totally.
a lot of carbs specifically to fuel what you're doing on the bike,
Exactly.
especially as a racer. So,
Yeah. Yes,
yeah.
it's an important piece of the puzzle for sure. Okay, so we'll jump back to your two truths and a lie. You said you used to ride horses competitively, that you broke 4 bones from cycling, and that you hold the 1 mile track and field record from high school. I thought the 4 broken bones was a lie. Which one was the lie?
You're correct.
Yay! Do you have any
You are
broken bones from
correct.
cycling?
Just two. I have two.
Oh,
And it
okay.
was it was at the same time from one crash
Oh, shoot. Was
years
it
ago.
collarbone or?
Yeah, collarbone and
Yeah.
scapula.
Oh,
Yeah,
ouchie. Yeah.
yeah. So
Shoot.
it could be a lot worse, honestly, from
Yeah.
all the years I've been doing racing. But yeah,
Yeah.
just two somehow.
Nice.
And the
Good.
collarbone is like such a common one too
Yeah.
with cycling.
Mm-hmm.
So it was
Yeah.
bound to happen at some point. Thankfully,
Yeah.
I got it out of the way.
Yes. Goodness. And then you only did track and field for 1 year and you hold the record, the 1 mile record?
So 2 years, sophomore,
Oh,
sorry, freshman
it's,
and sophomore year.
okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
But
Wow.
to this day, like somehow that was back in, oh man, that was like back in 2010, I think, when I was
Okay.
a sophomore. And my parents actually went back to visit my school. Like they went back to visit family and friends
Yeah.
in our hometown and stuff because they don't live there anymore, but they went back and then they
Mm.
went to go visit our school and they saw my name up on the record board still and they were like, "Wow, did you know that
Nice.
you still have the record?" And I had no idea. I
Oh,
thought it was
wow.
long gone by now because it was
Yeah.
so many years ago, but somehow it
Wow.
still stands.
Yeah, that's amazing. Good for you. And then you did used to ride horses competitively. I had a feeling that one was true with the
Yeah.
where you grew up. Well,
I
that's
was such a
great.
horse girl. I was such a
Yeah.
horse girl when I was younger and only competed once though. I did a
Yeah.
dressage show one time, but
Nice. Yeah.
I did take lessons for a few years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Hmm.
Then you transferred to 2 wheels
Yes.
instead of horse. Oh, that's great. Awesome. Well, this has been so fun. We're gonna have tons of links in the show notes for the listeners. We'll link to your coaching business, the Dreamcatcher Foundation. If we get a link for the Powless Grand Fondo 2025, we could put that in there. All that good
Hmm.
stuff for our listeners. The Roar book we talked about. We can also link the when Shayna was talking about the rice cakes recipe book for the listeners too to check that out by I think it's by Scratch Labs. So
Hmm.
we'll link all that down there for the listeners to enjoy. And thank you so much for joining us and hanging with me today, Shayna.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is really fun.